A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon, Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
The Netanyahu government continues to capitulate to Arab demands to release convicted terrorists as a precondition for conducting peace negotiations. The released terrorists were almost without exception murderers and mass murderers, and increasingly Israelis are questioning the government's actions. Does the Israeli public know something that the government does not?
It is quite clear to me that the Israeli public most certainly knows something that the government appears not to understand or does not wish to understand, and that is that it is the most basic obligation of any government towards its citizens to establish the rule of law, to apprehend wrongdoers, criminals, to try them according to law, to punish them, and thus to protect peace-loving and law-abiding citizens. Apart from anything else, this is common sense, and this is what every human being does in fact understand without having to have been told. As it happens, it's not just common sense, it is also explicitly what the Torah discusses, and it's not only something that Torah prescribes for the Jewish people. It is in fact one of the 7 Noahide laws, one of the Sheva Misvot B'nai Noah, that all human beings are expected to live up to according to Judaism. One of those rules, one of those obligations of those Noahide laws is to establish a system of justice, a system of courts where criminals are brought and tried and punished according to the law. Any government, any society that does not perform this function, that does not establish such a rule of law, any society or any government which allows criminals to go unpunished or releases criminals who have been apprehended, who have been jailed, but releases them against the law, knowing full well that these people constitute a danger to their citizenry, any such government, any such society is guilty of not having lived up to one of those basic 7 Noahide laws. In our case, we have, unfortunately, and to our great shame, a Prime Minister, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, and it is, after all about one man, Mr. Netanyahu. All of these decisions, and in the final analysis, can be placed at his doorstep. Without his say-so, without his initiative, these things won't even be discussed, and if he were opposed, they would never get off the ground. So we have, in this particular case, to our great shame and chagrin, a Prime Minister of a Jewish state who not only does not live according to the laws and precepts of the Torah as directed towards the Jewish people, he does not even live up to those very basic 7 Noahide laws that Judaism directs towards the entire human race. This is an outrageous and moral outrage, an outrageous act and a moral outrage. In order to release the murderers of entire families, people who planned and perpetrated attacks in which entire families, parents and children, were wiped out. People who did everything in their power to spill Jewish blood, to allow such people to go free against the law, against the rule of law, against the dictates of the Israeli legal system, is a travesty is a moral outrage, and this is something that it is impossible to understand and absolutely impossible to forgive.
Surely Prime Minister Netanyahu is only doing this in order to facilitate peace negotiations and with a heavy heart. So is it not possible to understand where he's coming from?
No, it is most certainly not possible to understand or to rationalize what he has done and what he continues to do. First of all, let it be stated, let us remind ourselves of the facts. Since the release of a huge number of terrorists in exchange for the captive Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit 2 years ago, there has been a constant rise in terrorist activities and violent attacks against Jews throughout the country. This has been noted in the media, and the facts are clear. And every time there has been an additional release of terrorists, the increase in violent attacks and terrorist activity against Jews in Israel rises another notch. We are talking therefore about a Prime Minister who willfully and with full cognizance goes against the grain of basic human decency and against the rule of law. It acts in a way which no country on earth, to the best of my knowledge, has ever been willing to do or to act in such a fashion. He is willing to trample roughshod over the law, risk the lives of his citizenry, and for what? For so-called peace negotiations, which every intelligent person on this planet knows will never, ever lead to peace. And there is another thing that must be pointed out here. No person has the right to endanger other people or an entire nation because of all kinds of wishful thoughts, wishful thinking, and aspirations and hopes. If in fact there was some chance of true peace, this could be, in theory, of course, negotiated with a clear understanding that we will never even discuss releasing convicted murderers. One has nothing to do with the other. If there was any true desire for peace on the other side, this would not be an issue. This too is understood by any intelligent individual. Lastly, I would mention the fact that on top of the security considerations, on top of the fact that this kind of behavior, the releasing of murderers and terrorists who then do, as has been noted in recent weeks by Israeli security bodies and different politicians in Israel, it is known that terrorists released in previous terrorist release campaigns have been busy building a terrorist network here in Israel, and much of the terrorist activity that we see today, the increased terrorist activity, is due to the efforts of those people who were released in the past. But quite apart from this, and quite apart from the moral and legal duty of all human beings and all governments to arrest and try and punish criminals, not to say murderers and mass murderers, quite apart from all that, this kind of behavior on the part of the Israeli government, and specifically on the part of Mr. Netanyahu, is causing the Israeli public to become very dispirited. The morale of the nation is definitely on the decline as a result of these terrorist releases. People are beginning to wonder if Their blood is simply to be counted as water. People do not see the end of such a policy. They do not see the benefit to such a policy. They just see that Jewish blood is cheap, extremely cheap, and that the Israeli government continues to capitulate, never stands up to any pressure, never makes any demands or even gains of any kind. It simply gives away more and more, and all in return for absolutely nothing. There is nothing more serious than demoralizing one's nation, particularly when that nation is in effect in a state of war, as Israel has always been in effect in a state of war. Whether at any particular moment a war has in fact been raging, or we refer to the lulls between wars that Israel has experienced. The British nation at the beginning of the Second World War was also demoralized and did not really believe in itself and in its ability to repulse a German invasion and to fight Germany and to win. Luckily for the British, they had a leader in Winston Churchill who was willing to tell them the truth, spoke to them about blood, sweat and tears, promised them nothing but a very hard, long struggle, the only end of which would be and must be victory. This was the special gift that Winston Churchill had, and was able, with that gift, to rally his people and to turn around a nation that was on the brink of collapse and disaster, turn the situation around, and eventually, after 5 long years, was able to come out of that war victorious. I can only envy the British people and the leadership that they found in that man, Winston Churchill, at that time. What Israel needs is such a person, an Israeli, a Jewish Winston Churchill, a man of vision, of courage, wisdom, a man with gumption and a true moral and idealistic core to him, as someone who can project that to an entire nation. This is not what we have, unfortunately, in Benjamin Netanyahu. What we have in Benjamin Netanyahu is a spineless, weak individual who has apparently no vision and is bereft of any and all moral compass or understanding. And this is perhaps the greatest tragedy that faces the Jewish people today.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.